Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar where we will do a review of the architecture, engineering, and construction industry with a particular emphasis on training and learning opportunities. I'm Thomas Carlson, and I am the head of global services at a company called KnowledgePoint, and we are an Autodesk Learning Partner distributor. Welcome, and thank you again for joining us. Before we kick off, I just wanted to let you know that we have muted the phone lines because we are recording this webinar. We will email you the recording after the call. And if you have any questions as we talk through the content today, feel free to use the chat and Q&A functions, and we'll do our best to address your questions. Our agenda is centered around three main parts. We're going to start by talking about building information modeling, how it's being applied today, using a few practical examples, and as I mentioned, with an emphasis on training and learning. We'll then move over to Autodesk and their training and learning solutions that are available to participants in the industry. And rounding off, we'll walk through a few practical steps that we would like to recommend for all of you and your teams. So without any further ado, let's get started. And before we jump into that agenda, I actually wanted to just say a few words about us here at KnowledgePoint, because I understand that many of you who are joining us may not have heard of us before. We are based in the UK, but we operate across the so-called EMEA territory, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And we are an organization that's specializing on providing support to the learning industry. One of our key collaborators and partners are Autodesk, a leading software business, who I assume many of you are aware of already. We have been their learning partner distributor since 2011, and our work with them is centered on enabling learning initiatives and making sure that the industry users of their tools can learn and use them even better than today. So with that said, let's focus on the main agenda of this call. And I wanted to kick off by just saying a few words about building information modeling, because it's clearly a term, a workflow that is well established these days in the AEC industry. It's really reshaped. If we look back over the past 10, 15 years or so, it's really reshaped how we design and manage the building and engineering process. However, that's one side only. In reality, there's also quite a few struggles in terms of applying these workflows in businesses today. There's research indicating that up to 70% of AEC industry businesses are actually not realizing the full potential of digital transformation, such as BIM, and all of their goals there. And the big reason for that is that there's a lacking skill set and experience in the existing workforce here and now. And that's without addressing the very rapid change that's happening in digital transformation, driven by, for example, AI, automation, etc., when we look ahead. We believe that the answer to this challenge of not meeting digital transformation objectives is about learning and training and making sure that our teams have access to experts who can help guide them and teach them new skills that they need and that your business needs. And without any surprise, maybe given the title of this webinar, we have a few examples that we would like to share of what's happening in industry here and now. And I think for me, a starting point is really to assess where we stand today. And the reality is that although BIM is well established, there's actually a lot of organizations around the world who are still operating in 2D environments, using 2D drawings and even printed paper plans. It's a reality based on organization structures and where different organizations stand today, but it's actually also a legal requirement in many markets still to operate paper-based. Cyprus is one example of a market where this is reality. And one of our Autodesk learning partners there, Shifa Ari at Ari Education, is very experienced in supporting businesses, smaller up to bigger organizations in making this shift from 2D manual process over to BIM and digital processes. As part of our efforts, we've asked for Shifa's advice and how to think about these. And she has some really good steps that she's recommended everyone to walk through. First and foremost, to make such a monumental shift, it's important to realize that this is about company strategy. It's not one isolated workflow or an isolated project. It's for the whole organization. And therefore, it needs to start at the top with the leadership, standing behind it, driving it, and making sure that everyone in their organization actually is committed to this move. A next step is to assess where the organization stands today. How digital are we already? And what are the typical workflows that would work well to digitize or move into BIM project management approaches? Start small by isolating one process or one project, implement digital flow there, test and evaluate, and then expand to the broader organization or the broader team. Having people who have the right experience, but also are willing to invest in their personal learning journey is another key takeaway from Shifa's work there. So this is just a high-level explanation of some things to be mindful of when you look at moving over to digital. Our report that we will mention in a while has the full details on this. But high level, it hopefully looks pretty easy. You assess where you want to go, you do a pilot, then you evaluate the effectiveness and learn from that and implement broader scale across the organization. But as we all know, it sounds easy in theory. A key challenge is probably to identify where do we stand today? What is it that we need to do? And what is it that we need to do, basically? To help a little bit on the way in that process, our team has put together a short assessment, a quick checker with a few key questions to help you assess where are you on the BIM journey or a digital transformation journey. This is by no means a full training needs analysis. Our partners can help with that, but it gives a quick indication and maybe most importantly, indicate some key areas that are important to look at. And it's areas such as how digital are we already today? How does data get managed and shared across the organization? Are we consistent in how we operate, in both in terms of data, but also how we manage projects? Team capability and capacity is absolutely key. And what type of skills do they have today and do we need to support them in developing? I guess what this says is a quick indication that if you answer yes to many of these questions, then you probably are quite ahead in the BIM journey. If you answer no, there's most likely a need to look at this based on Shifa's advice on the previous slide and assess on a more strategic level, how can we work with our teams, with our organization to implement this. This, as I said, just a quick checker, but we're going to include a link to it on our website where you can find this test and take it yourself to see what where you score, basically. It is important to highlight, though, that as organizations, we're not alone in this journey of digitizing. Especially with BIM, a lot of nations around the world are implementing standards and even mandates in some cases for how the construction industry needs to operate. That helps a lot. And you see a few examples here on this screen, which are taken from our report and where we have some good examples of what's then happening on the ground. One of the key conclusions is that for policy to have a true impact, a true effect, it's often key to have education working in that same direction, because the education sector plays a very important role in ensuring that the future workforce of any country has the future skill set that companies need. And in that respect, I wanted to highlight another practical example from our network. Another Autodesk learning partner is called Modena, and they are based in South Africa. They've come to the realization that in order to achieve the digital transformation, we need to introduce learners to digital design very early in their learning process, because that helps them think in these terms. It helps them bring in the type of project management approach that is needed and the workflows when you operate with BIM. Modern are therefore putting actually a lot of emphasis on supporting schools and universities alongside of their commercial work, which is primarily to work with customers in the industry. And they're doing this because they really see it as a strategic important point for them as an industry participant to make sure that the education sector not only follows along, but takes the lead in ensuring that the future workforce of South Africa, in this case, has the real skills that are needed. They're focusing on educator enablement to make sure that the educators are enabled, curriculum integration of digital tools, and very importantly, giving students the opportunity to practice, to experience what it's like to be out in industry. And a key example of one of their initiatives in that respect is the National Skills Competition, which they're a partner of. There, students get to compete against each other by using digital tools such as Autodesk products, but also other software products, and learning how to run a project based on industry standards. And the best teams get awarded. And this is an annual event that's happened over multiple years now. This latest edition was in 2025, and it brought together nearly 300 students and educators from across 9 provinces in South Africa, so covering a big part of the country. That's one example of how industry can really play a key part in supporting education, but ultimately also policymakers in government. So these 2 examples, the more focus on organizations through the Shifa's example with moving from 2D to BIM, and this one with Moderna working with education, maybe on a higher level policy, aiming at influencing policy, are 2 examples of how industry partners really play a key role in driving digital transformation for all of us. Our efforts as an Autodesk distributor is to try to spread these best practices and give inspiration to others. In doing so, we put together an industry insight report that we're calling BIM Realities, and it features a whole 10 different stories of practical implementation of building information modeling in real life. It gives input from different perspectives, different use cases, as we've just seen 2 examples here. It also showcases examples from around the world to give a good input on maybe geographical differences and commonalities, and also on varying levels of digital maturity. So it's not assuming that everyone's an expert from day one. A big emphasis is on learning and training, because that's what we are about. I'd encourage you, hopefully this snapshot that I've shown here raises some appetite to learn more and read a bit more. So the report is fully free. You can download it without any other commitments on our website, and we will also share it with you after the call. Now, a big component of this in our case is Autodesk. We are their distributor for learning and training, and they are one of the leading industry partners to the AEC industry worldwide. So what I also wanted to do in this call is to give you a snapshot of how Autodesk are working to make sure that the industry has a common standard, the tools, and ultimately also the skill set to drive digital innovation. And a very important part of that is actually certification, because it ensures 2 primary objectives. One, it gives employers in the industry a clear outline that can be verified of the skills that Autodesk, in this case, as a leading industry partner, believes that the existing workforce, but also the future workforce, needs to have in order to be effective in working with these tools and these workflows. The second objective that certification really meets is that it, in addition, gives all of the participants in the industry, so hence the users of these tools, very tangible learning goals to aim towards as part of their continuous professional development journey. Autodesk offers professional certification on 3 levels, which are adapted to different users' current experience and skills. It's the one in the middle on this slide, the one called Certified Professional, which is the most sought after in the region we work with, so the Middle East, Africa, Europe, CIS territories. And the reason is because this aims, as the name implies, at professionals, individuals who are already in the industry, who have some experience, practical experience of working with Autodesk softwares and projects, BIM projects, and this is then a credential that tests their skills and gives them a verifiable credential to use as part of their learning journey and also career development. Autodesk certification exams are available for a number of products, but I want to really underline that these exams actually do test workflow. So this is more than just buttonology, as we call it. It's not click here and do that. It's about understanding the workflow and where the different tools fit into that. On this slide, it's probably the left-hand side, the exams available to the architecture, engineering, constructions industry that are most relevant. I just thought I could very quickly mention, though, on the right-hand side, we have the product design and manufacturing industry portfolio, which, given that industries actually do converge these days, and there's more blurred lines of where different handoff happens between engineers, designers, the actual people who are constructing a building, etc. It could be useful for you to know that that industry is also covered by Autodesk. In the AEC side, it's definitely Revit. That's the primary focus, which is probably no surprise given that it's a well-adopted tool and platform in our industry. Exams are available for that product, but as said, linked to workflow. And since our topic here is really about BIM, I wanted to highlight that very recently there's been a new exam released by Autodesk called BIM Management for Building Design. And that exam is a bit more generic. It focuses on project design, management, collaboration, and then also adds tool set expertise to the whole thing. So that's worth checking out if you haven't heard about that before, because it's as I said, brand new release from Autodesk. If you're interested in certification, any of the exams, then there's really good overviews available on Autodesk's website, which you see here at the top on this slide, and that we will again share in the email. On the site, you can find detailed exam objectives. You can also see recommendations on how to prepare for the exams. Now, when we talk about certification, a key question from individuals that I meet with is always, well, so what's the end goal of this? What do I get if I actually put in the effort of preparing for and taking an exam? What's the whole purpose basically for me? Well, I think Autodesk offers 2 features that are quite interesting in this perspective. First and foremost, I think it's really important to look at certification as a stepping stone in an ongoing continuous professional development journey. It's not necessarily an end stop or the final stop basically on that journey. It's a stepping stone towards learning more, continuously developing. In that respect, anyone who takes an exam, whether they pass or not, will get a detailed score report from Autodesk, which highlights what went well. So what are the strengths, which areas do the test takers master basically, but also identifies areas where they need to develop a bit further, where they can learn more, linked to practical resources to learn those areas more. So it's a diagnostic test that comes with the exam and really speaks to this idea of an exam is just a stepping stone towards a longer learning journey. Certification is also, of course, about being able to showcase the success and show that we've achieved the skills that this exam is testing. And in that respect, there's a second initiative that Autodesk has, which is that they are collaborating with an organization called Credly. And Credly provides a platform where digital badges are hosted. A digital badge is linked to having passed an exam and then gives the test taker a credential that they can put on their LinkedIn, on their CV example, And that links back to Credly's platform. So a future employer, or if this is being used by a business to pitch for more business from clients, they can then click the link and actually get a proper verification that this individual on this team has been certified as an Autodesk professional in, for example, Revit. So that's quite powerful, both from an individual level, but actually also from an employer perspective of being able to use the success of the individuals who have passed exams as part of winning more business, winning new business, or maybe solidifying existing relationships with existing clients. Now, I've talked a lot about certification. A key component of, if this is of interest, is of course that before attempting an exam, it's important to take training and practice, because these exams are not necessarily easy, and they shouldn't be, because they should have a value of really demonstrating that someone has met objectives. And training is also important in the overall digital transformation journey, no matter if certification is part of that or not. So if there is an interest, either for those of you who are listening to this as individual learners who want to develop your own personal skills, or if you're running an organization and you're looking for training for your teams, then in that case, we have a network of so-called Autodesk learning partners. These are organizations that have been authorized directly by Autodesk to deliver training on their products. We have a network of 1,500 of these around the world. They all have certified instructors on board. And those instructors have also been authorized and tested by Autodesk to make sure that they deliver the best learning possible. Courses vary depending on the provider, but they all cover the main Autodesk products. They have standardized courses, but they also do customized training, especially relevant if your organization needs adapted training on workflow and projects that you are working on specifically to your scenario. Then this network of partners are well experienced in meeting such requirements and such demands. And they can all help prepare you and your teams for Autodesk certification that we just looked at. So as part of this call, we from our side at KnowledgePoint would definitely recommend and encourage you to check out the Autodesk Learning Partners and see how they are able to help you and your teams, either if it's about standardized training, setting the foundation, all the way up to very customized and expert-led, project-driven learning that works with your workflows and teams. And to help a little bit with that, we wanted to round off this call with an offer to help a little bit. So if you would be interested in learning more about courses and other learning opportunities available from our learning partners, then we put together a short contact me form that you can fill in. Our team here at KnowledgePoint will follow up by introducing you to at least one Autodesk learning partner in your region. If you wish, we can introduce you to multiple partners, and they will in return share their course program and other services that might be of value to you. There's no commitments, so no commitment to buy anything or to sign up to lots of promotions. That's not the intention with this. All we want to do is to share what's available and then leave it up to you to assess whether that works with your team development or personal development plans. However, if you do decide to go for training and even aim for certification, then we have a small incentive for those of you who are attending this webinar, because we know you've taken time out of your day to listen to me here share this information. So we have a pool of free Autodesk certified professional exams. These have a monetary value of $200, and anyone who signs up for a course with one of our learning partners in the next 3 months and completes the course has the opportunity to enter a draw where we will randomly hand out these free exam vouchers. There are a few terms and conditions. So as mentioned, we will require that the course is completed in the next 3 months. So that means up until the 31st of August, 2026. Anyone who wants to enter the draw for the free exam would need to share their Autodesk course completion certificate, which you will always get when you take training with an authorized learning partner. And that needs to be submitted to us at Knowledge Point. And then that's basically all that needs to be done, in all honesty. We will include instructions in this email that we will send after the call with the link to the recording and then the links to our website. What we want to achieve with this is really to hopefully inspire you to take some training, learn the Autodesk tools, even on a more deeper level than where you might be today, and to potentially then gain a verifiable credential that adds value both to an individual, but actually also to an employer who wants to use a key differentiator in the market of being able to say, my team has been certified and tested directly by the vendor of the tools that we're working with, in this case, Autodesk. So with that said, I know you've listened patiently to all the information we shared today, so thank you again for joining us. We have reviewed some highlights of how building information modeling, BIM, is implemented and shared a few examples. I've only scratched the surface. Our insight report, BIM Realities, has 10 in-depth case studies, best practice stories. It's completely free. You can download it directly from our website without committing to anything else. And as said, if you would be interested in taking a further step and investing in learning Autodesk software, then we have our network of Autodesk learning partners who can help. So with that said, we do have some time for questions, and I wanted to make sure we address any questions that might have come up as you've listened to the information I've shared here today. So if you have a question, feel free to use either the chat or there's a Q&A button that you should be able to see in your Zoom dashboard. And if you just want to type that in, then I'll do my best to reply to you here. I see that we already have one question, which is about the preparation training for the exam. So what the question is, what specifically is involved in that? So if you bear with me 1 second, I'm going to share I'm going to switch the screen sharing and move to the exam objectives that I mentioned. You may have caught that I talked about Autodesk's website and that they have exam objectives. So I'm going to share one example here. So just bear with me 1 second. Here we go. So this is the Autodesk website I mentioned, autodesk.com/certification. And then you will see a description of each of the exams that are available. I picked the latest one, which is BIM management for building design. And on here, you have a section which shows required skill sets and more specifically, the exam objectives, which is a fairly extensive document that outlines what Autodesk products are part of this exam, who should be testing, and what are the prerequisites. And then it walks through, if I scroll down a bit, what are the key areas that are tested on this exam. It doesn't mean that you specifically will get questioned on every single area, but as with many other tests we know from school or driver's license, whatever it might be, there's a curriculum that we all have to be prepared for. So that's my long-winded way of saying it, to look at what's being covered in the training. It's basically these exam domain areas, and there's 2 ways of getting to this and to practice on this. So one way is with our learning partners. So they would then, depending on the specific organization, they will have training curriculum that covers these parts. Sometimes it might be a bit more extensive than this, and in some cases, the course may not cover all of the aspects. It could be maybe 80 or 90% there, depending on how they're set up. If that's happened, then there's another way. On the same website, there's then a link to self-study resources that have been created directly by Autodesk. So that's their curriculum team, the same team that's built the exam, actually. And that's all free, the online learning resources. And those resources are mapped to the same domain area. So that's the best way of finding out. And this, of course, varies depending on the exams. I mentioned on the slide that Autodesk has well over 15 different exams, but there's a similar outline for every single unique exam. There's free preparation resources for every exam that are aligned to this domain area that's being covered. And our partners, as I said, can do something customized based on your previous skill set, basically. So I would always recommend starting here. And if there are more in-depth questions, then we can help with that individually, of course. Let me then just reshare my presentation. Thank you for being patient with me here. Okay, we're back. Any other questions? So that was the main question I saw. I know it can be a lot to take in at once, when you share information like this. So if you do think of something after the call, once you've had a chance to digest or maybe looked at the recording, then we will email this out. It should hopefully be done later today, just as soon as we've processed the recording. And myself and my team here at Knowledge Point are then happy to help you, especially to make introductions to regional partners who are experts on the industry you're in and the markets you're in, and look at how they might be able to help you with your Autodesk learning journey. So I see no further questions. So in order to not take up more of your time, I'm going to round off now. But thank you again for tuning in. I hope, as said, that we've been able to share a snapshot of everything, really good initiatives and projects that are happening in the AC industry, and that you can take with you to your teams and use as inspiration for what's possible and how you might want to develop further in your organization. Look out for the follow-up email and don't hesitate to reply to that. The email, there will be a help desk email included, and our team is happy to help with any questions. So with that said, thanks again for joining us, and I wish you all a great rest of your day, and hope to see you in another meeting soon again. Thank you, everyone.